for joining today. My name is Josh Osborne, and I'm the product manager for the CI tools here at Central Innovation. And today's webinar is the ongoing weekly CI tools webinar. Each week I'm just going to be looking at some things that have come up during support that I think people don't know about, frequently asked questions that we hear about, and that sort of thing. So this week I'm going to be looking at a handful of select objects, which I had a few people asking, do we have objects like this? And we do. So I'm going to show you how to use a couple of those. And I'm also going to look at using the collation feature in the Drawing Window Schedule tool if we have time at the end as well. If you have any questions as we go through, please just enter those into the questions panel, and I will go through at the end. And if we have any questions that I can answer while we're on air, I'll do that. And if not, I'll follow up with you via email after the session. So feel free to enter those as you think of them as we go. And the session will be recorded. So if you miss anything because you have to step out, or you just want to refresh it later, or you wanted to show it to someone else, the recording will be available up on my CI sometime next week. I am going to be working in ArchiCAD 24 today, although I think everything that I'll be showing you, yes, everything that I'll be showing you will also work in ArchiCAD 23 in exactly the same way, and in older versions of ArchiCAD, they'll also work fairly similarly as well. So you should be able to find your way if you are using an older version. But if you have any questions about that, just let us know. And if you do think of anything after the session runs, you can always log a support ticket with us by emailing nz.support@centralinnovation.com, and that'll come through to us and we can help you out, hopefully. So let's start with some select library objects. If you are a select customer or a CI Tools premium customer, you have access to our library. It has at various points been called the Essential Library, the Essentials Library, and the Select Library, but in ArchiCAD 24 it is called the Select Library again. And what this is it's a collection of a whole bunch of objects that we have created for our select customers and our premium customers to use in their ArchiCAD models. We run a regular monthly vote for what you guys want to be the next object over on my CI as well. So some of you may have seen that already and voted already. We go through the top sort of 4 suggestions that we have had for requests for objects that people want. We put those in there, and whichever one people wins the vote that people choose there, we make that in the following month, and then usually release about 2 weeks after that up on my CI. We've done quite a few of those recently, and I think there's currently a voting form up on the website. So if you head to my CI and go to the tips section at the moment, there will be a tip there that you can find called the Object of the Month voting form, and it will show you what the 4 options are, and it will let you choose which one you want to go for. And you can also enter feedback there about any specifics that you would like to add about the thing that you've voted for, or also suggest any other things that you want to do in there. If you do have other suggestions for select objects, though, you don't need to just use that form. You can also just email those through to the support desk like you would with a support ticket, and we'll pick that up and turn it into a select object request as well for our records. So once you download the select library, it'll come in as an LCF file, and then you just need to load it in your library manager. I've already got mine loaded at the moment. You can see it's just called the CI Select Library 24. And it doesn't particularly matter where you make this file live, so long as you load it in your library manager. A lot of people put it in a sort of a shared office library. A lot of people just put it into their ArchiCAD folder. I have mine just outside of the ArchiCAD folder so that I can easily not have it there if I need to show ArchiCAD without them, and then load it in easily enough. But it can go anywhere at all. Normally I would put it into the ArchiCAD Library 24 folder so that you don't have to load it separately. It'll just automatically load up with the rest. So that can be quite a good place to put it if you just want to dump it into your computer and then forget about it until the next version of ArchiCAD comes out. So I've got that loaded up, and we're just going to look at a handful of objects. If you were here for the webinar last week, we looked at the CI Tools cabinet tool, and in particular the way that the editing works in that, how you can lay out your cabinets in 3D and floor plan and elevation views so that you can make it look the way that it wants. And we have an edit palette that we use for that, which we use in the cabinets tool fairly extensively. And the 3 objects that I'm going to go through today also use that same edit palette, although some of them in slightly different ways. Once you get an idea for how that edit palette works, though, I'm fairly confident that any of the objects that use it, you will have no trouble mastering. So we're just going to look at 3 of them today that we've had. We recently had requests saying, hey, can you do this sort of thing? And the answer was yes, there's a select object that does that. So first of all, I'm looking at the shower here, but I'm going to actually show you the floor framing object first, which is under, so in your select library in the object tool, you'll see the select library is at the top level. Then you've got the folder named select library with all the categories in it. And in this case, I'm going to the structural folder and then going to floor framing. And these also work on the search option as well. So if you know that you want floor framing, instead of having to navigate your way through, you can just click up here and type in floor fra, and that should find it for us. There we go. So we're going to be using floor framing 1943. The numbers are the number that the object was made in order of all the objects we've ever made. So 1943 is quite a lot newer than 1623, which is also in the select library. That's mostly just there for legacy purposes because the newer one does the same things that it can, but with more options. So this would be the one that you would want to use. So I'm just going to select this object here, and you can see we've got something that looks like a floor frame here and in 3D, and we've got some settings here. So the configuration is where most of what we're going to be looking at is set in advance for the actual structure of this floor frame element. So we've got the depth, width, and spacing for most of the parts in here. You can see they're all set at the defaults. We also have the graphic editing option over here, which is what we're going to look at shortly. And we also have attributes so that you can set the way that it displays. But the actual structure of the floor frame we are going to draw using our edit palette in floor plan. So I'm just going to go with the default settings here, and I'm going to click OK, and then I'll place this object, and we can have a look at it. So I'll just show the selection in 3D so that you can see what it looks like by default. So there's a nice floor frame object. You can see it's put in some default spacing frames there, and now we're just going to go in and change it to what we need it to do. So you can see when it's selected in floor plan that instead of having black hotspot nodes on the corners, it has purple ones, and purple always means editable. So we're going to click on one of them. And once we do, you'll see that my edit palette pops up, and this is the same edit palette that you've seen in the cabinets tool and possibly in some other objects. And at the moment, because it was turned off before, it's just showing ghosted. But because I clicked on a node that was in the middle of one of the edges, it's going to do a midpoint shift. So I'm just going to do one of those to start us off. And now you see that the edit palette is turned on properly now. And you can see that the change got made right away. And this works very similarly to how the exterior envelope of the polygonal cabinet works. And essentially that means that it works like the fill tool does. So it lets you push and pull the edges, cut holes in and out, that sort of thing, in the same way that you would edit a fill or a slab. So let's just go ahead and work with some of those so that you can see how it works. So I've adjusted the midpoint here. Let's do an offset edge to pull this out and then this out. So obviously you can use these controls to just trace the outline of whatever you want to put this on. Offset those edges. Let's put a curved edge on one of these just so that you can see that. We've also got options to move contours. So I'll just turn that one on and you'll see it puts a hole in the floor frame now. And we can now click on one of the hotspots there and move that frame around. And as we do, it's moving the sort of outside frame of the hole to fit into your floor frames. You can move it so that it intersects with them, or just have it floating like that. And you can also go here, rotate contour, and you'll see that the control has changed now so that I can rotate it instead of moving it. Ooh, did that? There we go. I moved the wrong handle so that we can rotate that around. And then there's also the option to duplicate a contour, which is how you would just start adding a second contour inside of your floor frame. So you can go through and set them up that way. And if we flip back to the standard move vertex mode, if you want to get rid of one of these, just pull it inside out back in on itself, and it will remove that contour as we go. We'll just add one back in, and I'll just increase the size of this so that you can see the repeats a bit better. Okay, so it works roughly in the same way that that slab and fill tool and the cabinets tool did as well. So now let's jump into 3D again and just see how it has changed. So you can see it has come out to the size that we wanted it to. It's made the contour that we wanted in there, and everything matches up with what we were seeing in our floor plan view. The next thing that we can do with this tool is you can see in our edit mode at the moment we're working with this edit the shape part of the toolbox. I'm going to move this down to the next one, which is the edge type. And again, this is similar to what we had in the cabinets tool. And so this lets us modify the edge type. So you can see the top one here that is it's essentially a not an edge type. If I apply that to one of them, you'll see that it just removes the frame from the edge there. You can change back to the one that we already had. Change to a double, or change to an edge where there's probably a terminology for this, but an edge where the frame that we selected is cut by the outer frames to it. And you can change back to the main one and it will reverse that option. So there's 4 different edge types that you can use, including no edge. So you can go make your way around your floor frame, setting those up the way that you need them to look. And if I jump into 3D, you'll see the change there. We've got a double on that edge now, and let's just turn one of them off as well so that you can see that. Yeah, so it does pretty much what you'd expect, but can be makes the tool very versatile. You can essentially reproduce whatever shape you want for your floor framing. Next thing we're going to look at is the origin and direction toolbox. So once I open that one up, you'll see that it doesn't have a sub toolbox in this one. It just sets up a bunch of nodes that you can see correspond to each of the frames across here. And now I can go in and adjust those by moving the hotspot. You can see it's adjusting that one and all of the ones inside of it. So you can grab any of those and increase their spacings, decrease their spacings, or increase them as you go. So instead of having regular spacing, you can insert parts where you want to manually set the spacing while still keeping everything else spaced out the way that you wanted it to. Oops. And then the last option here is the internal layout, which is probably the part that you're looking at this floor frame and thinking that it's completely missing, is this part here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some by clicking this purple node here. And you can see, started another one. As I dropped this node onto here, it's added a vertical part into these horizontal frames. And if you choose the second hotspot type, it's going to add a whole row of them offset to each other across where you want it to be. So you can go through and use this to set up all of the vertical elements that you need in there. It will still honor the contour that you've taken out of it, and you can add individual ones as you need to, as well as these ones that span the whole thing. So now if I jump back to 3D, you should be able to see all of those changes. Yeah, it's looking quite a lot more complex now, but you can see it's got all of those verticals that I put in. We've still got our hole, cutting it out where it should be, and looking good. So hopefully you should be able to use this object to produce most of your floor framing that you'd want to be able to do, most shapes and sizes and setouts and all that sort of thing. There's not much else to it besides that. Obviously, it's just a very editable sort of grid element, but it can be very useful. So the next one I'm going to look at is the veranda roof, bullnose veranda roof, which is something that someone was asking about this week, if it was possible to make one. And while it is quite difficult to make one using the roof tool and applying coverings and that to it because of the curve, this object makes it relatively easy to do. So you can see I've got some settings in here about how the profile will work and how the cladding will work. I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to set the path to a polyline so that we can stretch that around and make it look the way that we want it to. And then I'm going to hit OK and place it. Now if I select that and show it in 3D, you'll see what it looks like by default. So you can see it's just a nice angled roof with a curved edge there. And now if I select it, you'll see we've got our purple hotspots back again. And so we're going to use these to modify the shape of this roof. So if I grab one of these top ones here, you'll see it has the move vertex option. I'm just going to move that out so that it's a bit wider now. And then I'm going to use this middle one here to create a corner, which is probably something that you would want to do in your veranda roof pieces. So I've added that there just by using that, and you can see that once I do that, it's created some secondary in the middle nodes, and again I could further create more and more of those as I go, so that you can make it do whatever shape that you need it to. And this edge here, the top edge, is acting essentially as the polyline that the structure of the roof is based on. So if I jump back to 3D now, you should be able to see that it is following that shape that I've made. It puts in channels between the intersections of the roof elements, and you can see that the nice 3D corrugate is applied to it as well. Not much else to this one. It's nice and simple and does just the one job, but there is plenty of control over how exactly you want it to look. You can adjust the end miters either here or in the floor plan view, and obviously you can use the attribute controls to control the way that it looks. It's just showing in white at the moment, but you can make it whatever you want. So that's the veranda roof object, veranda roof bullnose it is called. And the last object that I just want to quickly show you is that shower that we had up at the beginning. Shower 1978 it's called. We do have a couple of other shower objects in the select library, but as you can see by the index numbers, this one's a newer one, so it uses that same polyline method, which I'll show you quickly. The older ones also work great. They're just more for specific designs of showers, and this one's more freeform. So I'm just going to select it as is and hit OK so that you can see what it looks like. So you can see it places with some tiles on the floor, and we've got a channel in the middle. So let's just have a look in 3D and you can see what we've got. So we've got two glass sides, a glass door, and you can see we've got a nice channel in the middle here. If I select it, you can see that there's a couple of those nice purple hotspots, which means we can edit something. So let's go and have a look at what we can do with those. You can see we've got some on the edge here. So you can click this one and lift the height of that edge piece there. Or if you choose the inner of the two nodes, the one that's on the glass line, that'll let you adjust the glass base as well. So you can have the sides of it not necessarily start right at the bottom of the shower if that's what you need. But we are missing a back to the shower, which obviously the default is set so that it could be placed where the back is at a wall. But if you want to change that, you can do. So we're going to look at the other editing things that we can do back in our floor plan view so that you can modify the way that works. So just to drop back out to our floor plan view, you can see with it selected at the moment, I've got a bunch of vertexes similar to how I did for the other two cases. And if I click this middle one, it's going to do exactly what you'd expect it to. It's going to make a angled corner inside of it, which no person would probably ever want to do. So I'm just going to undo that. And you can also see in this view here that I've got these two orange lines representing the glass that was on the sides and the glass door here, but nothing on the back there. So that's what I want to fix up in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the settings and I'm going to say that I want to use the edge type edit mode, which we've used before. So you can see it's the edge type mode and it looks similar to how it was before, and you can see what the edge types are. We've got this edge type here is just normal edge. This edge type here is a glazed edge. This one here is a door that opens, what do you call it when it opens that way? It opens, it's hinged on the left and this one's hinged on the right. So we can go through and apply those as we need to. So what I want to do is I want to add a piece of glass to the back. So I'm just going to choose this edge type and apply it to this edge. And you can see as soon as I do that, that the glass appears in my floor plan view. And if I jump out to 3D, you'll see that that glass is applied now. And it works the same way that the other glass does. So it has the same settings to let us adjust the base height and the height of the lip thing. And you can use that to add doors and that sort of thing as well. The other option that we have here will let us adjust where this drain is. And at the moment, we're using a linear one at the moment. So it has 3 nodes on it. The base node lets you adjust where it is in the shower. The second one lets you adjust the angle that it's at in the shower. And the third one lets you adjust the length of it. So if I do that, you can see that the drain will now be where I've told it to. But you can also come into the settings and tell it to be a round drain instead. And that will just have the more sensible control of a thing that lets you move where it should be in the shower. So that should let you control pretty much everything you want to on one of these type of showers. Obviously, the other edge edit mode just lets you do what I was doing before, modify those polylines. You can add a curved edge or offset the edges as you need to as well. And all of the way that it looks, there's the settings for the hardware for it. If you want to modify those, it comes with a bar handle by default, but you can change that to something else. And the attributes let you set the way that it appears as well. So you should be able to control everything that you need to there and make a shower that looks the way that you want it to. So that's 3 select objects that we've got in there, which if you're using ArcCAD 24 or 23, those are all available to you anytime. Just load up the select library and you can grab them right away. Now, the next thing I wanted to do was looking at the door and window schedule collation option, which should be relatively quick. So we've got 5 more minutes, so let's just go ahead and do that. And if you do have any questions, just enter those in the questions panel and I'll get to those after we've looked at this. So the door and window schedule is something I showed the schedule notes in a recent webinar. Hopefully a lot of people have started using those, perhaps. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to look a little bit more at the scheduling and specifically the collation option in the scheduling. So I'm just going to open up a door and window schedule that I had already. These are a bunch of windows and doors that are in my model. And you can see that I have a couple of elements here where there are multiple IDs listed, and that's because they are being collated. So I'm just going to go and show you how that works. If I go to the door and window tool in Schedule Manager, just select the schedule that you're interested in looking at. Go to Criteria, and you can see the options to collate matching items here. Now this defaults to off, so normally it will just show everything as an individual schedule element, but as soon as you turn that on, it will go through and it will check all of the settings of all of the doors and windows. I'm just going to update this one, and it will group together any identical windows and doors so that they show as one element, and then it just lists off the IDs of them beneath them. So you can see that now it is showing we've got IDs 2, 3, 8, 4, 14, and 15 in this one element here because they all share the same attributes. So nice and easy to turn it on, and it does what you would think, but you can extend it a little bit further by isolating certain parts of it. So we've got our collate option on here. You can see there's a bunch of sub options which will let you make the tool consider certain things to be special. So at the moment, if I'm collating matching items, but some of them happen to have different materials or surfaces to them, it's going to ignore that at the moment. It doesn't care about materials because it's mainly just looking at the structure of the door or window. However, if you want it to care about doors or window materials or surfaces, you can select that and it will separate those out. So you can see we've got 2, 3, 8, 4, 14, and 15 in this one element here. I'm going to turn on isolate materials because I've actually made window 02 have a red frame. So I'm just going to OK this. I'll let it update the schedule. And then once it's finished updating that, we should see that that window will break out into its own. Yeah, there we go. So you can see 3, 8, 4, 14, and 15 are still collated here, but 2 has been separated out into its own thing because in this case, my schedule cares about the material being unique. So you can use those controls there to make it separate out your schedules in whatever way that you need them to be. Normally, we just have the isolate orientation option turned on there because generally people do want to see those as being isolated depending on which way they're placed, but you can also isolate the handing, the pens and fills of them, the thickness of the wall that they're in, or the hardware that's attached as well. So you can use any of those controls to make your items be collated or not collated depending on what you want to see in your schedule. So that's the door and window schedule collation option. And that is everything that I wanted to cover today. If anybody has any questions, you can enter those and I'll go through and see if I can answer some of them on air. I've had one person ask about it. The questions, by the way, don't have to be anything to do with what I've shown you today. It can just be any CI tool stuff. If I know the answer, I'll try and answer it now. If I don't, I'll find out and get back to you later. One person is asking about how you cut a hole in the cabinet tool, which the way that I showed, I think that was while I was showing the floor frame with the contour in the middle of it. That's not the way that you cut holes in cabinet bench tops, unfortunately, because the way that we make it work is we just let the user do it using the solid element operation tool, because that way gives you exactly the size that you need for the element that's in it. You don't have to resize the hole on your cabinet if you resize the sink and that sort of thing. So I'll just very quickly show you how we do that if you haven't seen it before. So I'm just going to place the default cabinet object. There we go. Click to place that. I'll go and grab a sink to put in the top. Let me go use this one last time. Sink general 24 is what I use. So I'm just going to choose a very basic sink here. That's just in the ArchiCAD default library. Oops, placed it at the wrong elevation now. Let's just see where it has gone in. Where has it gone? See my cabinet. Excuse me while I mess around here. I want it to be on the ground floor. Okay, should be all right. There we go. So let's just move this into place here. Okay, it looks like it has exactly the same top elevation as my cabinet, so that's not going to work very well. That's a little bit high, but you get the general idea. Just drop that down again, 210. So you can just see the edge of it over my cabinet there. So we've got our sink in there, and we could attach a tap to it or something like that, so it looks like an actual sink. And so the way that you cut your hole out of your cabinet for that is, rather than, and this applies if you're using a bench top as well, in this case I'm just using a cabinet, select your cabinet. Sorry, you don't need to do that first. Go to the design menu and go to solid element operations. Then select your cabinet, and your cabinet will be the target because we're wanting to cut out of the cabinet. If you have a bench top on here as well, you'll need to select the bench top and the cabinet object and add them both as a target. It can handle as many targets at once as you want. Then select the sink, and this is the operator because we want it to make the cut. And then choose the subtract with upward extrusion option. So that way it's going to cut out the hole in the shape of the sink, and then also anything that is above that. So in our case, anything that's above the bottom of the sink. So it's going to carve the hole out like that. Hit that option and then press execute. And once you do that, it will do the actual thing that you've set it up to do. And you can see it's now cut a hole in my sink so that you can see the actual, sorry, a hole in my cabinet. So you can see the actual bottom of the sink. Now you don't have a cabinet top passing all the way through it. So that's the way that we recommend to use for that, just because it means that now the hole in this cabinet is being placed by the sink object itself. So if you were then to move the sink object, it moves the hole with it. You don't have to constantly go back and update the hole in the top of your cabinet to make that work. It's just a much better way of having it always be in the right spot for you.